Hello. Sorry about that delay. Hello and welcome to a live Deprogram with Keri Smith. At our new time, we are now streaming live on Mondays and Fridays at 2 o'clock Central. This is our new time, so welcome. I hope you had a great week. I hope you're getting ready to go into a fun weekend. We had some friends in town. My husband had a lot of friends from childhood and over, and we had a great time. And I love this time of year. We're finally relaxing. We're getting into like the Christmas spirit, while still working several different kinds of jobs. But having fun with friends. It's so nice to be able to have people over and no longer the outside of the house looking like a Halloween house. That was really nice. Somebody asked in the Christian panel chat, and I didn't answer it it wasn't because we had such a small amount of time for that show and it wasn't relevant. But they asked about the raccoon. The raccoon is back, and I know that there's a music video out today. I just saw part of it about the raccoon. And Floral from Under a Rock. They like to do these videos taunting me. They call the raccoon Ricky, but let me tell you what, Floral, we just found out the raccoon is definitely a woman. The raccoon is a female, and she's got to go. She really has to go because somehow she made it back in past all of our defenses and made it back into the walls. And the specialist I had out here was like, no, if it's a male raccoon, he said, and you close up the entryway, that the male raccoon will just be like, oh, well, I guess I'll move on. And the female will not. And so, Ruthie the raccoon, yes, yes, Pirate. Hey, Pirate, Merry Christmas. Good to see you. Hey, Robert. Oh, no, not the raccoon. Yeah. Yeah, we got to figure that out. But there's a video out today. Go check it out on Floral's channel. They enjoyed taunting me about this raccoon pest. So Lily of Fox Valley says she's baking cookies. How fun! I hope it's Christmas cookies. Good to see you guys. Anyway, welcome. If you're new here, this is a show we do Mondays and Fridays, a live show. We talk about the news. Sometimes we have interviews, talk about different topics. I actually have an interview in the can, pre-recorded, that's going to be coming out next week. I'll let you guys know on the community tab when that's coming out, and just have to edit some on that one. I'm excited to get back into doing interviews. And today, though, I wanted to do a focused topic, and what I wanted to talk about was DEI. And even today, even in 2024, I will still meet good-hearted, well-intentioned people who are not that familiar with what woke ideology actually is, with what social justice ideology actually is, and haven't really been in this world or space we've been in, or haven't been forced into this world by virtue of a cancellation or something. And so I think it's really helpful to explain to those people. I'm always hoping those people are checking out the channel and trying to figure out, why is it Keri opposes woke? What is it that she thinks is wrong with it? So I think it's helpful to explain what's wrong with some of the different parts of woke, including DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So today what we're talking about is the news that President-elect Trump, as most of you know, he announced a while back that he's starting this presidential advisory committee called Doge. And it's a play on Dogecoin, but it stands for Department of Government Efficiency. And the job of this department is to cut federal spending, to reduce the size of government, and to try and make some kind of a dent or come up with a plan for our massive, ever expanding federal debt. So he said he's appointing Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy to head this up. And everybody, I'm very happy about that. I think they're both fit for it. I'm hopeful about all of this. Let me just bring this up. I'm going to share an article with you. CNN had this on the front page today. So CNN is, part of the woke cult corporate media. They're going to put out the establishment talking lines, the cathedral talking lines. Pretty much, all of mainstream media is part of this cathedral. They put out the propaganda. They put out fake news. They accuse everyone else of doing what they do. And they try and create hysteria and cause division. And this is a bit of hysteria. So let's read some of this. Hey, Squat and Pea. Squad P just became a member. Hey, lady, thank you very much. Good to see you. Okay. So CNN front page today, it says Doge versus DEI. Republicans promise to purge government diversity initiatives could be wide-ranging and hard to pull off. Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, the two billionaires tasked with slashing government waste, are expected to recommend an agency-wide purge of spending on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, three sources familiar with their plans told CNN. That could include eliminating entire divisions involving DEI in agencies across the government. Yes! Yes! The whole agency has to go. That's the problem. Anything called diversity, equity, inclusion, all of it has to go. So, you're speaking my language, CNN. This isn't alarming to me. This is like, I hope. I hope. Could include eliminating entire divisions involving DEI in agencies across the government, such as the Office of Equal Employment Opportunity, diversity and inclusion at the Department of Health and Human Services, and the Office of Civil Rights and Equal Opportunity Policy at the Department of Defense. Quote, anything having to do with DEI will be gone, end quote, said one of the people familiar with the plans for President-elect Donald Trump's new Department of Government Efficiency, adding that Republicans in all branches of the incoming government are on board. Quote, everyone is committed to working together and rooting it out. Musk and Ramaswamy have made no secret of their disdain for DEI. Elon Musk called it, quote, just another word for racism. Yeah, earlier this year. Quote, an efficient government has no place for DEI bloat. Time to Doge it, Ramaswamy posted last month. Among Doge's first recommendations for action could be rescinding Biden-era executive orders related to DEI, according to one of the people familiar with Doge discussions. President Joe Biden expanded government workplace DEI protections. One of the worst things he did by signing a number of executive orders, widening them to include a broader group of Americans, from pregnant people and military spouses to rural communities and caregivers. Let me explain something to you if you're on the left and you're visiting this channel today or watching this. Here's the end point of woke. If you're in an ideology like woke ideology that is an identitarian ideology, identity based, white nationalism, white supremacy is another example of an identitarian ideology. If you're in woke and woke prioritizes certain racial identities over others, it also prioritizes certain sex-based identities over others. It's all about different quote unquote identity groups. But basically, woke says the best way to look at the world is as a competition for power among competing identity groups, and that some groups are the oppressors and some are the oppressed, and that we have to take power away from some groups, again, in this context, racial groups, and give it to other groups so that we reach this equitable place. So, and it's basically Marxism put through a blender, and instead of being about class and wealth, it's about power and identity. But it's the same sort of like, we have to redistribute power. We have to forcibly take it. So it trains people, it trains young, gullible, naive, big-hearted people like myself when I was in college. It trains people who are liberals to start to, it programs them to unlearn everything they know and to come to believe that they must treat people differently on the basis of race or sex or sexuality or what have you in order to redistribute power. And this is where you see all these rules in this ideology crop up, where it says, white people need to shut up and sit down and check their privilege. And if they cry, it's white fragility. And if they say that they're not racist, that it's white fragility, that they're all racist. Like, that's where all these rules come up with how you're supposed to treat people differently based on race. In conversations, you'll see, check your privilege. I'm not listening to you because you're white, that kind of thing. Instead of making arguments, they just point to they're racist. They point to identity. It's the same thing white supremacists do. But trust me, my comments on X are flooded with these idiot white nationalist groiper anti-Semites right now. And it's the same thing they do, the woke do. Except the woke go, Wrong because you're white, right? Or you're a man, right? Okay, but these these white nationalist anti-Semites, they're like wrong because you're Jewish. Like they're just it's basically the same thing. They're just they just pick a different identity. They have a different identity stack basically of which identities are at the top, which ones are the oppressors and which ones are the oppressed. But the framework of the belief system is very similar. Okay, so if you're in this ideology, like woke ideology, that says that certain identity groups are protected, that they're special because they're oppressed, because they're historically oppressed and marginalized, and we have to treat them differently until we're equal. So, in other words, don't treat people like individuals, treat them like group members. Again, like white nationalism does that. Let's treat them like identity group members and so we have to be racist to end racism. That's what woke says. But they don't call it racist, but that's what they're saying. That's what they're telling you to do in your behavior is to be a racist until you can end racism, supposedly. So if you're in a group that's doing that, and it's like, we're only going to protect and advocate for and give special privileges to and discriminate on behalf of the oppressed identity groups, right? So you've got this office here, the which is the one I was looking at, employment. There are a couple that were named up above, health and human services, right? So you got these different offices, and they only include certain protected identity groups, like the special identity groups. So they'll include, like women or trans people or black people or Latinos, et cetera, et cetera. But so what happens in that kind of belief system is you're incentivized to claim as many oppressed identity groups as you can and to come up with new oppressed identity groups all the time. That's why you see woke expanding all the time, where it's like, oh, well, now fat studies, which is a thing, the fat acceptance movement got pulled into woke. And so now they say average weight people are the oppressors and fat people are the oppressed. And if you lose weight, you're racist. They really say this. I'm not kidding. I'm putting some of this stuff out there for those of you who are new. This is all true. So they pull these other categories of identity in, and they're like, what about us? I'm a member of an oppressed group. Mental health justice. I'm in an oppressed group. They'll say, I have XYZ mental illness. I'm oppressed. So, okay, let's pull that in. Let's protect that group. That group needs protecting too. And so you get to this point where look what Biden's doing. He eventually expanded the DEI protections. That means special treatment for, certain groups. By widening them to include a broader group of Americans. So now they've included in the oppressed groups that need to get special privileges, pregnant people. That's, by the way, only women get pregnant. I noticed what you're doing there with the woke language, but pregnant women and military spouses. And they included rural communities and caregivers. Okay, so these are all groups now that need special treatment. Do you understand that the end result is for more and more groups to keep advocating on behalf of themselves and coming up with until everyone's included? You should just include everyone from the beginning. Do you see how this breaks down? It's ridiculous. There should be no such thing as DEI protections just for these identity groups. Like, no, it should be for everyone. Whatever those protections are, for everyone. Like, quit dividing things up and saying only these special people get this until you special people have to fight to be included. And so we're going to keep expanding it until now DEI also covers rural communities, caregivers, military spouses, and pregnant people. Eventually, it'll cover everyone. The smallest minority is the individual. That's the end result of all of this. Well, I've got this oppression and this oppression and this oppression, and I'm marginalized in this way and this way and this way. So dumb. Women are people, Keri. That's true. That's true. Okay. Pregnant people, right, Therese? You start to spot the cult language. You're like, oh, great. So I'll continue. Doge has no statutory authority and is essentially a presidential advisory commission that can make recommendations to Congress and the White House, but there are indications that targeting DEI-related initiatives will be a priority for empowered Republicans looking to cut spending across Washington. Pete Hegseth, Trump's pick for defense secretary, gave a laundry list of DEI-related initiatives that he says Trump has told him to remove at the Pentagon. Quote, clean house of the woke crap. Yes, Hegseth told Megyn Kelly in early December. All that stuff, climate stuff, the critical race theory, the DEI and genderism, get rid of it. All of it. I love this. I pray that this actually comes to fruition. Supporters of government DEI programs worry about what this means for protections and opportunities. Here it is. Here it is. For groups of people historically discriminated against. Discrimination doesn't fix discrimination. You don't heal or cure discrimination with discrimination. You don't heal or cure racism with racism. You don't cure collectivism with another kind of collectivism. You don't cure identitarianism with a different identity group at the top, and you don't cure identitarianism with identitarianism. You don't. Historically discriminated against. What you do is you end the discrimination, period, across the board. You don't then put, like Biden did, like the Democrats have, put racial discrimination into law and say, we're going to do this now. We're going to discriminate, like the colleges that were just told by the Supreme Court recently, hey, guess what? You got to stop racially discriminating against Asian people and white people. What's wrong with you? The way to end discrimination is you end the discrimination. You don't, let's switch gears and let's keep on racially discriminating. Let's just do it this way now. How long are we going to do it this way until things are equal? And then how do we roll that back then? Now that we've taught everybody it's okay to do this and it's not racist, and we've taught them a new definition for racism so young generations feel comfortable being racist against Asians or white people or what have you. Like, how do you put that genie back in down the road and say, hey, guess what? It's not okay to discriminate against Asians and white people anymore. How do you do that? How do you even measure when these groups have now become equal and it's okay to stop discriminating now against men or against white people or what have you? How do you figure that out? None of these woke people have answers. They've never thought this through in terms of, how do we judge when we've reached this utopia where we can stop being all the things that we claim to hate? We can stop being racist. We can stop being, people who discriminate on the basis of race or sex. That's what they've become. And it's not liberal. I'm looking to see what Pirate said. Oh, Republicans want to cut spending. That's cute. Yeah, true. Both parties are terrible on this. Okay, so here's a quote. Here's the people worried, right? What does this mean for the groups that we give privilege to? Quote, it's so important to always remember that those three letters of the acronym, and just realize what it actually is. What it actually is. And then they're going to tell us, which is about creating fair and equal opportunity for people. Bullshit. That's not what it's about. It's the opposite. It is exactly the opposite. This is what's known as Orwellian language, where you call something, you name something the opposite of what it is. It's a persuasive tactic in language. It's a manipulative tactic. It's something that sociopaths and psychopaths and con artists do, people who manipulate. And it's something that this guy does. And you're never going to guess who he works for. You're never going to guess who he works for. This guy saying this. He's saying that DEI is about creating fair and equal opportunity for people. No, it's about implementing discrimination, unfair and unequal opportunities for people based on what race they are and what their sex is. That's what it's about. But he continues, he goes, regardless of their identity and backgrounds. Yeah, all of that's a lie. It's the exact opposite. So who is this guy? Says David Glasgow, executive director at the Meltzer Center for, you guessed it, diversity, inclusion, and belonging. Belonging is their new word. Belonging is their word. In the past year or so, it's become a lot more popular. I would say past 2 years. So for a while, they were all about diversity. Then they moved on to being about inclusion. They felt like that was the more hip term. Now they're all about belonging. The executive director. So he gets paid to push this ideology. It is his job to push this bullshit woke social justice DEI ideology. Of course, that's what he's saying. Republicans in Congress tend to share Ramaswamy and Musk's hostile view towards DEI programs. Georgia Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene will chair a new House subcommittee to work on Doge initiatives, along with the House Oversight Chairman James Comer, both of whom have been critical of DEI. Quote, "We support the concept of DEI," said a Republican congressional source familiar with Doge's goal of eliminating DEI. But having offices specifically dedicated to D&I within government departments isn't necessary, the person added. I would go further. I don't even support the concept. The concept is trash. The concept that the way that you fix racial discrimination is with more racial discrimination, like that's a broken concept. So I don't support it. A Doge spokeswoman did not respond to CNN's request for comment. Okay. Look at this part. DEI across the federal government. Any purge of DEI initiatives would affect hundreds of millions of dollars or more in proposed government spending. Try billions. With potential ramifications for thousands of federal workers, contractors, and the communities they serve around the country. But wiping DEI initiatives out of the government could be a Herculean task, in part because it's next to impossible to track. Is it? Is it? I love this. This is basically the federal government and people who defend the federal government being this huge and out of control and wasteful and spending our money on bullshit brainwashing. This is them defending how big they're like, well, but the government is so big now. Like we made it so big that we can't tell you if how much we're spending on DI or not, because we're just so incredibly large and inefficient now. We're so large and inefficient, we just can't get you those numbers. Wow, it sounds like we need a Department of Government Efficiency to clean this up then, right? That's what it sounds like to me. It's impossible for us to track this. What is and isn't considered DEI is subjective, it says, leaving open the question about what will and won't draw the attention of Doge and what will ultimately be cut. Is it subjective though? I would argue not. Not any more subjective than anything else. Yeah, they want to pretend like it's some vague topic that's hard to put, or what, just like the people online who I'm sure you've seen who they say that, woke doesn't mean anything. It just means something that conservatives don't like. It's like, that's not true. It actually has a very specific meaning of which I laid out earlier in this video, so I won't go down that rabbit hole again. But it's a very specific meaning, but this is sort of similar. Like DEI is so vague and subjective. How can we possibly identify it to root it out? What is and isn't considered DEI subjective, leaving open the question about what will and won't draw the attention of Doge and what will ultimately be cut. Calculating the total cost of DEI across the government would require going to each agency individually according to the Government Accountability Office. Wow, that's what they're going to do. They are going to go to each agency individually. That's what Doge is going. They are the Department of Government Efficiency. This sounds like a lazy person, and the boss comes in and is like, "Hey, do you have those TPO reports?" And he's like, it's just so vague, like what is and isn't a TPO report. And it would require me to go to like each office head and talk to them. And I just, okay, then go talk to the office head. like it just, you don't want to do the job. How funny. It just cracks me up. It would require going to each agency individually. Quote, even then, The information may not be available since there are no requirements for agencies to specifically collect or report that information. Why not? We're spending millions, if not billions of dollars on DEI, but we don't have any tracking mechanism to see where it's going and if it's doing any good and if it's doing what it was supposed to do or not. There's no accountability. Okay, sounds like it should be cut. Sounds like this is a job for Doge. The Office of Personnel Management, the federal agency in charge of leading DEI efforts across the federal government, declined to comment for this story or provide any information on an overall figure for total DEI spending. CNN analyzed the proposed budgets of 20 federal agencies, while each noted diversity initiatives. There you go. Anything that says diversity initiative, cut it. Cut it. Anything that says has the cult words of diversity, inclusion, equity, belonging, cut it. While each noted diversity initiatives in fiscal year 2024 and fiscal year 2025 budget requests, they didn't all explicitly detail DEI expenditures. Some federal departments have entire offices dedicated to DEI. That's like UT Austin. I mean, could you believe? I forget the number. It's staggering. It's been a while since I covered it. But their DEI department at UT Austin had bloated until recently when, the governor was like, we're going to start cutting some of this stuff. But it had bloated to over 100 people. I'm talking about admin. This is why college tuition is so expensive, because all these students are paying for these bloated DEI blood-sucking barnacles on a ship. That's how I think of them. Just living off the largesse of people who actually do real work, while their job is to indoctrinate and brainwash people into a cult. They get paid to do it. Some federal departments have entire offices dedicated to DEI, like the ones at the Department of Defense and HHS. There are also programs across departments that include money for things such as minority-owned business development, as well as diversity recruitment and training efforts. No. Why? Diversity recruitment. Why? The only diversity that matters is diversity of thought and opinions and ideas. You need people who are big idea thinkers, more liberal minded in terms of like scoring higher on openness, on the big five personality, people who are coming up with the people with imaginations and artists and coming up with ideas. And then you need people who are scoring higher, who are more conservative minded when it comes to getting things done and score higher and conscientiousness and have a good work ethic and know how to make things work. You need both kinds of people. You need people challenging each other. But to waste money saying we want a diversity in the skin color of people who work here or the sex of people who work here, that's BS. And you're also trying to force something when you do that, something that's not natural. If you look at the most egalitarian countries in the world, the Scandinavian countries, you will see that in these places where people have the most choice in what careers, what fields they go into, that women tend to gravitate more towards careers where they work with people or animals. They gravitate towards healthcare. This is on average what women choose for ourselves, on average. Men gravitate more towards careers and work where they're working with things, on average, right? Not all, clearly. But when you're in a country that's trying to, by committee and by ideology, say no, STEM should look like this with this percentage being female, that's ridiculous, because women are not voluntarily wanting to go into those places on average. Even the brightest women, we've talked about this before. If you look at bell curves and you take the outliers, like the smartest men, the smartest women, the women who score the highest in math, who excel in math, they also excel in other areas, in writing. Like, they have lots of interests and they're good at lots of things. Whereas the men who are the highest achieving in math are usually usually only high achieving in that area. So if you've got women who have all these different talents and interests who are high performing in all of it, and they're not choosing to chain themselves to a desk coding every day for 16 hours a day, why do you think that is? It's because they don't want to be doing that. Like, so why are you looking at numbers and saying, oh, it has to be this, or sexism? We're going to force this. Why? Most kindergarten teachers, elementary school teachers and stuff are women. They're choosing that. Are you going to force men into that? We need 50-50. It's ridiculous. Do you know who picks up your garbage? Almost all garbage truck people are men. It's like over 98% or something. Sewage. You going to force women into that? Women, get in there. We need 50% of you. Diversity recruitment in sewage. No. The woke are not going to do that because they're hypocrites. They're not going to push for that. They're not going to talk about the glass ceiling in sewage. It would be a poop ceiling. There's a poop ceiling in sewage. They're not going to talk about it because they don't care about women going into that field. They only push in areas that they view as prestigious. Okay. Let me just back up a second. Actually, hi. Let me just check in on the chat real quick. I've just been going and going and I haven't even talked with you guys. Okay. Is there anything I need to see, Pirate? Okay. JSB, women should have a calming effect on men. On average, again, yes, I would hope so. I would hope that they do. Okay, we'll go back to this. Some federal departments have entire offices dedicated to DEI, like the ones at DoD and HHS. There are also programs across departments that include money for things such as minority-owned business development, as well as diversity recruitment and training efforts. Ugh. Price tags for DEI efforts vary widely across the government, but clues can be found in the amount of money agencies have publicly requested as part of the appropriations process. HHS, for example, requested $113 million in its federal year 2024. That's just for 1 year, guys. Just for one of these years, 113 million. They wanted for, quote, training for diversity in the health workforce. Look at that wasted money. That's our tax dollars. Training for diversity. Not only are they teaching nothing valuable and nothing of use, they're actually doing the opposite. They are programming and brainwashing healthcare workers with our tax dollars. They are teaching them things that are bad for society and bad for us with our money. That's up from 102 million in 2023 and 94 million in 2022. So it kept growing. The Department of Labor's 2024 budget request included $515,000 to hire 2 full-time employees and provide for the necessary resources to, quote, support diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility program and training initiatives. Just wasted money. Right here with scissors, snip, 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 just cut this. Fire all these people. They can learn to code, right? Why don't all these women working in DEI learn to code? We need more women in STEM. That's what they're always saying, right? Why don't they go into STEM? Why don't they take one for the team? Why don't they go into sewage work? Take over the team. Fix the numbers. Hey, instead of getting paid $500,000 to brainwash other people about diversity, why don't you go into a field like sewage and actually put your skin in the game, put up or shut up. Like, I'm going into sewage work to support the percentage of women, to increase the percentage of women who are in it, instead of just getting paid to bitch about how there aren't enough women in certain fields. I am going to go into that field. Why not do that, women? When you get fired from DEI, put up or shut up. Lindsay the cynical geek. I'm more disturbed that DEI has infected the medical field than anything. This initiative will literally kill people. It will. This is one of the worst areas. I think this is when people really started to take it seriously, is when DEI made it into aviation and made it into the medical field. And I've known for years that it was coming in the medical field because I've told you guys before, if you're a regular here, I had a friend back when I was in the woke world who we were both in activism together, and entertainment. I met her in the entertainment world, but she ended up getting hired and had this like fancy position at Harvard Medical School. No medical training, no medical background. Her job, she headed up some DEI department, and her job was to brainwash Harvard medical students for years. This was her job. That there was no such thing as biological sex. That sex was assigned at birth. To push for, transing kids, that kind of thing, mutilating and sterilizing kids in the name of this ideology, and to also teach that being fat is healthy. And I remember she celebrated online. One of her victories was getting a hospital. They had been lobbying to remove male and female from your hospital admission bracelet, so your doctors wouldn't even know what your biological sex is, which is kind of important. Like your blood type, it's sort of important. There was the case of that woman who was pregnant. Do you guys remember this case? Who the doctors didn't know that she was a woman because she was living as and trying to present as a man. And she came in with abdominal pain and they misdiagnosed her and they didn't even know she was a woman. That would have helped. They could have ruled out pregnancy if they had known she was a woman. They thought she was a man. And she lost the baby. So, I mean, it's kind of a little bit important. It's really dangerous having moved into the medical field. And that old friend I mentioned, that old acquaintance, she ended up moving on. So not just at Harvard Medical School was she doing this, working as part of a big department whose goal was to brainwash Harvard doctors, people at Harvard Medical School, into woke ideology when it came to race and weight and sex and gender and everything. But then she would get paid because she was from Harvard Medical School to go around the country and do these seminars for students at other medical schools. It's crazy. And now you've got these reports coming out of certain hospitals who are hiring on the basis of DEI. And this is what I think you're talking about, Lindsay. I mean, this is I don't want who wants the surgeon who got there because of their race? Who got to where they are because they're a woman or because they're black or no. I want the best surgeon. I couldn't give a crap if it's a man or woman or what color they are or any of that. Like, I want the best surgeon. I want the best pilot. I want a system where the hierarchy is based on meritocracy, not on identity. This is when it starts hurting people. I'm going to go back to this article. So we're talking about how much money they wasted in Health and Human Services on DEI. Here we go at the Department of Agriculture even, to quote, establish the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office at the Department of Agriculture under Biden. It requested $3 million that same year, and a more than 5% increase from federal year 2023. The State Department requested $73.6 million for DEI in 2025. Okay, it doesn't seem like it's that hard to identify it, does it? Let's cut all of this. In its federal year 2025 budget request, the Department of Defense has already asked for $50.9 million to fund DEI related activities. Denied. Denied. Just stamp it denied, Trump. According to a spokesperson, that amount would account for 0.006% of the department's total budget request, the spokesperson said. The spokesperson also said that the DoD's Office of Civil Rights and Equal Opportunity has a staff of less than 15 people and that DEI issues are not their primary duty. I'm inclined to believe them on this. I'm not one of those people who Like, I would want to see. Obviously, Doge needs to look into everything, but the original intention of the Office of Civil Rights and Equal Opportunity is to prevent the DEI stuff, is to prevent racial discrimination, to prevent equal outcomes instead of equal opportunity. You know what I mean? Like, they should be the ones leading the charge against DEI, the Office of Civil Rights and Equal Opportunity. If they're doing their job correctly, if they haven't been completely co-opted like the ACLU, which has given up civil liberties in order to push racist and sexist discrimination and identity-based discrimination. I'll continue. How this money is spent often goes well beyond workforce recruitment and training initiatives. For example, HHS spends some of its DEI funds on increasing the diversity of patients participating in its clinical trials as part of its cancer research. That's not a bad thing. Look, there's little things like that if you want to carve out, like they're like, hey, we want to make sure we get all different demographics in this clinical trial for this medicine. Great, no problem with it. But if it's like, hey, we want to make sure that every that our staff at this hospital is staffed with representation of each demographic. No. No. HHS also aims to expand efforts to ensure diversity, equity, and inclusion in nutrition and in health and food security research. It is also implementing strategies for vaccine equity. What? Equity, vaccine equity? Ugh. Two gross words that go together. Anyway, in rural communities and advancing research that promotes maternal health equity. Maternal health equity? Anytime you see this word equity, just think communism. like we will all be equal in the rubble. All the times that Kamala, for example, talked about equity and she basically said out loud what they think it is, which is we'll all end up in the same place. What does that mean with vaccine equity then? That means we all end up in the same place? Because I would like to be able to choose. Thank you very much. Just like with careers. Imagine that. I'd like to be able to choose. Expected legal challenges. Hundreds of civil rights and advocacy groups are preparing for the numerous legal fights that would come from Republican efforts to dismantle DEI. Here we go, the ACLU. And we know the ACLU, I used to be a card carrying member. I used to donate to them all the time. They completely abandoned their principles. They had an internal coup several years ago where all of the actual like classical liberals were forced out and these woke jihadists, these woke revolutionaries, these woke radicals took over, and they've completely abandoned their commitment to civil liberties in pursuit of instead pushing woke ideology, social justice ideology, which is authoritarian, which is racist and sexist and all these things. That's what they've become. A shell of what they were. They're like a zombie. They're basically animating the corpse of the ACLU with woke. So the ACLU told CNN it's carefully reviewing all public statements from Doge, the incoming Trump administration, as well as comments made on the campaign trail. Quote, we are crafting a legal strategy by finding all the ways their anti-DEI plans are in defiance of civil rights laws. Hey, you know what would have been cool? ACLU president or director, Renika Moore. You know what would have been cool is, do you remember the COVID years? They just happened very recently. The COVID years, that's where our government in several states decided that they had the right to tell us where we could and could not go in public. That they had the right to force mask on us and mask on children, even though there was no evidence showing that they worked or that children especially need to be wearing them. Do you remember that when they were trying to coerce us into taking a shot, an experimental shot before that had not been around long enough to even do a longitudinal study on the side effects, but they were telling us we had to do this and that we had to give it to kids. And do you remember that? And remember the federal government was telling federal employees that they had to take that shot or lose their job? And they told all the army they had to take that shot or lose their job. Where were you, ACLU? Talk about civil liberties. What were you doing during those years? Because you sure as hell weren't fighting for American civil liberties. when a government, our government, was prioritizing government power and authoritarianism over individual liberty. You didn't care about civil liberties. But look at you here. This woman, by the way, she's the director of ACLU's racial justice program. Thoroughly woke. As Doge works to identify how to wipe out DEI government-wide, it will have a likely ally in the Department of Justice, where Trump's pick to head the Civil Rights Division is conservative attorney Harmeet Dillon. You guys, I love Harmeet Dillon. I'm so excited about this appointment. I love it. You guys, the knitters, you may know Harmeet is an avid knitter. And I think she's very fair-minded. I love that this is one of the picks I'm very happy with. Anyway, conservative attorney Harmeet Dillon. She's a free speech advocate, you know. She's pro-liberty. She's good. I mean, I'm just very happy about it. Okay, I'll move on. She's expected to reverse Biden-era civil rights initiatives. Dillon also isn't likely to legally defend government agencies whose DEI programs are targeted, one of the sources said. Of course not, because she's against racism enshrined in the law. A representative for Dillon declined to comment. Doge will also have strong allies in Congress, where Republicans have already written at least one piece of legislation aimed at ending DEI protections. In June, Texas Representative Michael Cloud and Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, now the vice president-elect, introduced the, quote, Dismantle DEI Act. Here we go. I love this. I love it. If reintroduced and passed in the next Congress, the bill would not only wipe out federal DEI programs, but also all of Biden's DEI-related executive orders, putting an end to DEI training, yes, and overturning rules preventing current employees working on DEI issues from being reassigned to other duties or agencies. I love it. I love it. They're like, you know what? Something's wrong with you. You've been working for DEI. I don't think we can hire you in any other department. Like, because clearly something's wrong with you. Goodbye. You might be tempted to bring the DEI with you into this place. So no, like, I love it. Pack your bags. You're gone. Get out. Would prevent them from being reassigned to other duties or agencies. The introduction of the bill kicked off a rapid response from civil rights groups who say it would reverse hard-fought protections that benefit all Americans. Disabled Americans are protected by many DEI provisions, and while congressional Republicans say they will still have their rights protected even after DEI is purged, their advocacy groups aren't buying it. Quote, the act would likely harm millions of disabled people, end quote, the Disability Rights Education and Defense Fund, a legal advocacy group, wrote in a letter to congressional Republicans in November. Again, though, what special rights are you supposed to have that this is going to harm? You really have to think through what they're saying. And that, you know, if you were talking to someone who's defending this in person, that's when you get the opportunity to ask questions and say, well, what do you mean? You know, in this article, they're not including that. But I would like to know. Because you guys remember when the aviation was talking about, gosh, this was just this year. They were talking about how they were going to be hiring more blind people. Do you remember this? Hold on. And we were like, wait a minute. Why? wait. Again, I think it was, I don't know if it was TSA or somebody in the chat tell me. If somebody knows what I'm talking about, find that for me and I'll read it. But the point being, just like with other forms of DEI, it is misguided to say every job, every department should have more XYZ kind of disabled person. That's not true. It's actually not true. Kevin Anderson says, I remember that United said they wanted 50% of their pilots to be women or people of color. Yeah. Equally bad. Okay, I'm going to continue so we can get through this. For now, civil rights and advocacy groups are focused on the fight to come and on reminding people of the importance and variety of benefits provided by DEI programs. Really? The importance? Delmelzer Bear, Director of Public Policy for the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, a nonpartisan civil rights organization, says that opponents have misrepresented DEI as something that benefits only a narrow group of Americans. Oh, it doesn't? Quote, some people enjoy the benefits from programs that they don't even realize would qualify under this umbrella, said Bear, like women working mentoring programs, which is under this concept of DEI because it's providing support for a group of people who have been historically and continue to be discriminated against. Wow. Do you mean like in sports where you're letting men compete in women's categories, discriminated against in that way? Bear, do you have anything to say about that? Do you have anything to say about women who are losing scholarships and losing medals and losing sponsorships and spots on Olympics teams to men in the women's category? Do you have anything to say about that kind of discrimination? Or are you only concerned about the historic discrimination that you use to justify being sexist towards men who don't claim to be women? Those guys get anything they want, but men who don't claim to be women, well, let's discriminate against them. Liz King, Senior Director of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, a coalition of more than 200 civil and human rights organizations, says the basic concept of DEI is infused into, quote, core American values, something she argues its opponents have tried to diminish. Quote, our opponents are looking to maintain the status quo of racial inequality. Do you see how they lie about everything? No, you are. You are literally fighting to keep racist inequality legal. That's what you're doing. You are trying to keep it in the government. That is what you're doing. The gall. They lie like Satan, the father of lies, the bold-faced lying, to say someone else wants to maintain racial inequality while you are fighting for racial inequality in the law. It's just mind-blowing. It's like a psychopath. It's like a narcissist. It's like a cluster B personality disorder to just bold-faced lie like that, to accuse someone else of what you're doing. She continues, and so they are attacking this boogeyman of an acronym they've come up with. But we are talking about a core question of democracy. Democracy does not require racial discrimination and preference. King. There is growing concern among disability and civil rights groups about how eradicating DEI programs will impact the enforceability of settled civil rights laws on the books. Quote, it's not possible to comply with our civil rights laws without also pursuing diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility, said King. That's bullshit. Our civil rights laws are against DEI. You're crazy. Challenges to DEI allow the violation of our civil rights laws. No, they don't. It's the exact opposite. You should have already been prosecuted under civil rights laws for racist discrimination against Asian people and white people. And that's why we're going to see them in court, she says. Yeah, I'm sure the ACLU will be representing you. Oh my gosh. Okay, so now they're saying, oh, we can't possibly figure out how much money has been spent or that we're spending. Look at this one. Here's one. Here's a place to cut. So a report came out. This is an article from December 12th. This is only a little over a week ago. A report came out that shows that an estimate that Biden, here's the headline, Biden's education department shelled out $1 billion with a B, $1 billion on DEI since 2021. $1 billion on DEI just in the Department of Education. 1 billion of our tax dollars, our money, going to indoctrinate and brainwash children into racism, into this identitarian cult, this racist cult. Our money paid for it. President Biden's Department of Education has shelled out at least $1 billion on various diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives since 2021, according to a new report. Researchers unearthed some $490 million on DEI hiring efforts. Just on hiring, 490 million on DEI. And again, this is just in one department, the Department of Education. Cut it. $343 million on DEI programming and $170 million on DEI-related mental health. DEI-related mental health. Wow. According to a study from Parents Defending Education, a conservative organization that rallies against what it deems harmful agendas in the classroom. Analysts at PDE combed through troves of public data detailing the grants doled out by the government, which sported a $238 billion budget in fiscal year 2024. $238 billion. The only people or groups to benefit from the enormous amount of grant funding are the universities, the administrators, and DEI consultants at the expense of children's education, PDE researcher Ryan Stately told Fox News, which covered the report. Quote, this needs to change by placing children's learning at the forefront of education instead of prioritizing race-based policies in DEI. Imagine that. Imagine putting kids' learning first in the education department. Like, what should we focus on this year? Should it be reading, writing, arithmetic, or should it be more of this racist DEI? Let's do the racist DEI stuff. Let's spend money on that. What are literacy rates like? Oh, they're at an all-time low. Let's spend more money on DEI. PDE cited a litany of examples in this report, including a $21.5 million grant to Montgomery County schools featuring professional training for instructors on, quote, equitable instructional and disciplinary practices to increase student achievement and decrease incidences of inequitable disciplinary practices. Cut. We're at the point now where I feel like we've spent the past 8 years explaining why all this stuff is crap. Now we're at the point where it's like, we're done talking. Just get the F out. Like, goodbye. You're crap. Another example provided was Ypsilanti Community Schools in Michigan, which obtained $15.5 million in grant funding and spent $19,500 on a consultant for 1 day for professional development centered around, quote, culturally responsive teaching. Some DEI grifter got paid almost $20K for 1 day of consulting in this school. Your tax dollars covered it. Michigan. The school system also dished out $19,250 for copies of that consultant's book. So in total, $40K to that DEI grifter. Wonder which one it was. The School District of Philadelphia received a nearly $4 million grant for a restorative justice program that entailed support from Fanaya Davis, sister of Angela Davis, a former Communist Party member whom PDE cast as a radical. Yeah, she is a radical. She is a communist. Other stances cited included a $4 million grant used to back a 3-week summer camp tethered towards, quote, student identities underrepresented in the computing field, and $1.4 million grant for training 40 elementary school teachers how to, quote, enact equity-centered education, end quote, and a $306,209 grant for teaching school counselors, quote, trauma-informed, anti-racist, social emotional learning. Bingo! Who had all of those words on their card? Does anybody have the bingo card? I mean, it's just like 5 across. There you go. Trauma-informed, anti-racist, social emotional learning. Cut it all. Researchers at PDE cautioned that the figure likely doesn't account for the full scope of DEI funding by the Education Department because they poured through grants specifically for DEI and social emotional learning and youth activism. Quote, these numbers are based on available data and not exact. The number of districts and students is likely much higher than much higher than that $1 billion, guys. Possible DEI efforts that were not marked as such may have flown under the radar, while districts that had multiple grants were only counted once. There were at least 229 such DEI-related grants distributed since 2021 to at least 42 states, as well as Washington, D.C., per the report. President-elect Donald Trump in his Time Magazine Person of the Year interview, by the way, they are so mad about that, that he was named Person of the Year. If we have time, we might watch a video of some of the angry reactions. Anyway, President-elect Donald Trump, in his Time Magazine Person of the Year interview published Thursday, called for a virtual but not full closure of the Department of Education. A virtual closure but not a full closure, which was first established in 1979, though that could face hurdles in Congress. In the meantime, he's tapped Linda McMahon as his secretary designee for the department. Conservatives have long clamored about axing the Department of Education, going all the way back to former President Ronald Reagan. I think we should axe the whole thing. I do. The department oversees federal student loans and aid, such as Pell Grants, issues various grants to schools, gathers statistics on education across the country, investigates civil rights concerns, and more. Trump's incoming administration has eyed a broader overall federal government. Has eyed a broader overall of the federal government. I think there's a word missing there. He tapped Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy as co-heads of the Department of Government Efficiency to tackle bloat throughout the government. Doge is technically not an actual government department. DEI programs have long been under fire from conservatives, particularly in education. The U.S. public education system ranks 12th globally in terms of development, according to the U.S. News and World Report. There we go. I'm just looking to see what you guys are saying. Yeah, Kendra. Kendra says, it's funny how much money the communists make off of us and they don't share it with the poor, right? That DEI consultant who got the $40K from that one school in Michigan, wonder how much that commie shared of the money from people who work, who weren't paying taxes. Okay, I've got a couple more things pulled up here. I don't know if do you guys remember when Trump was in office the first time? He did a couple of executive orders that were somewhat related to DEI, and he did one in 2020, September 22nd, 2020, that this alone, there were so many reasons why I was going to vote for him. Obviously, this alone would be worth it. This alone. But there were other issues like that, like his position on mutilating and sterilizing kids and being opposed to it, right? That alone is reason to vote for him. But this one was a big one. And I wanted to go back to this for a second, just to remind people of some of the language in this and how opposite it was from the Democrats. Executive order on combating race and sex stereotyping. By the authority vested in me as president by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, including the Federal Property Administrative Services Act, and in order to promote economy and efficiency in federal contracting, to promote unity in the federal workforce, and to combat offensive and anti-American race and sex stereotyping and scapegoating, it is hereby ordered as follows. Section 1, purpose. From the battlefield of Gettysburg to the bus boycott in Montgomery and the Selma to Montgomery marches, heroic Americans have valiantly risked their lives to ensure that their children would grow up in a nation living out its creed, expressed in the Declaration of Independence. Quote, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, end quote. It was this belief in the inherent equality of every individual that inspired the founding generation to risk their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor to establish a new nation, unique among the countries of the world. President Abraham Lincoln understood that this belief is the electric cord that links the hearts of patriotic and liberty-loving people, no matter their race or country of origin. It is the belief that inspired the heroic Black soldiers of the 54th Massachusetts Infantry Regiment to defend that same Union at great cost in the Civil War. And it is what inspired Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to dream that his children would one day, quote, not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character, end quote. Thanks to the courage and sacrifice of our forebears, America has made significant progress towards realization of our national creed, particularly in the 57 years since Dr. King shared his dream with the country. Today, however, many people are pushing a different vision of America that is grounded in hierarchies based on collective social and political identities rather than in the inherent and equal dignity of every person as an individual. This ideology is rooted in the pernicious and false belief that America is an irredeemably racist and sexist country, that some people, simply on account of their race or sex, are oppressors, and that racial and sexual identities are more important than our common status as human beings and Americans. This destructive ideology is grounded in misrepresentations of our country's history and its role in the world. Although presented as new and revolutionary, they resurrect the discredited notions of the 19th century's apologists for slavery, who, like President Lincoln's rival Stephen Douglas, maintained that our government, quote, was made on the white basis by white men for the benefit of white men, end quote. They have a lot in common with white nationalists and white supremacists. Have I mentioned that? The woke left. And what the white nationalists, the white supremacists, which is what some are calling the woke right, they have a lot in common. Our founding documents rejected these racialized views of America, which were soundly defeated on the bloodstained battlefields of the Civil War, yet they are now being repackaged and sold as cutting-edge insights. They are designed to divide us and to prevent us from uniting as one people in pursuit of one common destiny for our great country. Unfortunately, this malign ideology is now migrating from the fringes of American society and threatens to infect core institutions of our country. Instructors and materials teaching that men and members of certain races, as well as our most venerable institutions, are inherently sexist and racist, are appearing in workplace diversity trainings across the country, even in components of the federal government and among federal contractors. This is after that big story broke about the federal labs where they were in DEI trainings and they were giving all this stuff out about white privilege and male privilege and inherent bias and implicit racism and all this stuff. For example, the Department of the Treasury recently held a seminar that promoted arguments that, quote, virtually all white people, regardless of how woke they are, contribute to racism, end quote, and that instructed small group leaders to encourage employees to avoid, quote, narratives that Americans should, quote, be more colorblind or let people's skills and personalities be what differentiates them. So they're opposed to that, being colorblind or judging people on the content of their character or their skills or personalities. They're against what MLK said, basically. Training materials from Argonne National Laboratories, a federal entity, stated that racism, quote, is interwoven into every fabric of America, end quote, and described statements like colorblindness and the meritocracy as actions of bias. Materials from Sandia National Labs, that's the one I remembered, Sandia National Labs, also a federal entity for non-minority males, stated that an emphasis on, quote, rationality over emotionality was a characteristic of white males and asked those present to acknowledge their privilege to each other. Oh my gosh. Remember that? It makes me want to vomit. It's like a struggle session. It's like a communist struggle session. Get down on your knees, kiss the ring, admit your sin, admit that you're a witch, admit that you have privilege, A Smithsonian Institution museum graphic recently claimed that concepts like objective, rational, linear thinking, hard work being the key to success, the nuclear family, and belief in a single God are not values that unite Americans of all races, but instead are aspects and assumptions of whiteness. Do you remember this? The Smithsonian, remember when they put that out? We've covered that several times on this channel. And they had to take it down because that poster that the Smithsonian put out could have been put out. If somebody showed it to you and said, oh, white nationalists made this, white supremacists made this, you would have been like, checks out. But no, it was made by the woke. It was made by the woke. It was so racist towards everyone. white people, people of color, everyone. It said being on time was a factor of whiteness. Only white people can be on time. It was so racist. The museum also stated that facing your whiteness is hard and can result in feelings of guilt, sadness, confusion, defensiveness, or fear. What about laughing? Facing your whiteness. All of this is contrary to the fundamental premises underpinning our republic, that all individuals are created equal and should be allowed an equal opportunity under the law to pursue happiness and prosper based on individual merit. Yes. Executive departments and agencies, our uniformed services, federal contractors, and federal grant recipients should, of course, continue to foster environments devoid of hostility grounded in race, sex, and other federally protected characteristics. Training employees to create an inclusive workplace is appropriate and beneficial. The federal government is and always must be committed to the fair and equal treatment of all individuals before the law. But training like that discussed above perpetuates racial stereotypes and division and can use subtle coercive pressure to ensure conformity of viewpoint. Such ideas may be fashionable in the academy, but they have no place in programs and activities supported by federal taxpayer dollars. Thank you. Research also suggests that blame-focused diversity training reinforces biases and decreases opportunities for minorities. Look at that. Interesting. They brought some science into it. That doesn't prove what the woke want. Our federal civil service system is based on merit principles. These principles, codified at 5 USC 2301, call for all employees to, quote, receive fair and equitable treatment in all aspects of personnel management without regard to race or sex and with proper regard for their constitutional rights. Instructing federal employees that treating individuals on the basis of individual merit is racist or sexist directly undermines our merit system principles and impairs the efficiency of the federal service. Similarly, our uniformed services should not teach our heroic men and women in uniform the lie that this country for which they are willing to die is fundamentally racist. Such teachings could directly threaten the cohesion and effectiveness of our uniformed services. Such activities also promote division and inefficiency when carried out by federal contractors. The federal government has long prohibited federal contractors from engaging in race or sex discrimination and require contractors to take affirmative action to ensure that such discrimination does not occur. The participation of contractors' employees in training that promotes race or sex stereotyping or scapegoating similarly undermines efficiency in federal contracting. Such requirements promote divisiveness in the workplace and distract from the pursuit of excellence and collaborative achievements in public administration. Therefore, it shall be the policy of the United States not to promote race or sex stereotyping or scapegoating in the federal workforce or in the uniformed services, and not to allow grant funds to be used for these purposes. In addition, federal contractors will not be permitted to inculcate such views in their employees. And it continues with the definitions and more specifics on how they're going to do this. But this was one of Trump's anti-DEI initiatives. Again, September 22, 2020. I thought it was so well written. I thought it was amazing. This alone would have been reason to vote for him again. And then, of course, when Biden came along, Biden put out the exact opposite. The exact opposite. Biden passed so many DEI executive orders. So many. And here's one. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm starting to lose my voice reading a lot today, but look at this. June 25th of 2021, executive order on diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in the federal workforce. Let's read just a little bit to see the difference in tone. So we just heard that from Trump, which draws on history. I mean, whoever wrote that was really well written. Now we're going to look at the woke staff writing for Biden. By the authority vested in me as president by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, including sections, et cetera, and in order to strengthen the federal workforce by promoting diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, it's hereby ordered as follows. Section 1, policy. On my first day in office, I signed Executive Order 13985, advancing racial equity and support for underserved communities through the federal government. Oh, right. That was the first one. There were so many of these that he passed. These disgusting DEI executive orders, which established that affirmatively advancing equity, civil rights, and racial justice and equal opportunity is the responsibility of the whole of our government. To further advance equity within the federal government, this order establishes that it is the policy of my administration to cultivate a workforce that draws from the full diversity of the nation. Does he mean diversity of thought? No. As the nation's largest employer, the federal government must be a model. Why, by the way, why is the federal government the nation's largest employer? How did it get so big? The federal government must be a model for diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, where all employees are treated with dignity and respect. Accordingly, the federal government must strengthen its ability to recruit, hire, develop, promote, and retain our nation's talent and remove barriers to equal opportunity. It must also provide resources and opportunities to strengthen and advance diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility across the federal government. The federal government should have a workforce that reflects the diversity of the American people. A growing body of evidence demonstrates that diverse, equitable, inclusive, and accessible workplaces yield higher performing organizations. How many times, listen to how this is written compared to Trump's executive order. He said diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility 4 times in this paragraph. If you took those words out, there would hardly be any sentences left. Federal merit system principles include that the federal government's recruitment policies should, quote, endeavor to achieve a workforce from all segments of society, and that all employees and applicants for employment should receive fair and equitable treatment in all aspects of personnel management, end quote. So he goes on, and again, he uses these words over and over and over, and is basically talking about how they're going to use DEI in hiring. This is the first one. There were so many he did. I'm going to stop sharing it though. I don't know how much more of this I can read because my voice starting to hurt. Just checking to see what you guys are saying. Rodney, this is horrifying stuff. Keri, thank you for bringing this to light. Well, yeah, the DEI stuff is horrifying. Have a lot of hope though. We started off the show with talking about Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency, and how they're supposed to be going in and cutting all of this largesse, cutting the budgets, cutting the staff, reducing government, federal spending, reducing the size of federal government. I would love to see this happen. I did see some detractors online, some leftists were saying, oh, this is so funny. The conservatives, they call all of us conservatives, whatever. They're like, oh, the Trumpers are saying that we should have a smaller government. So what does Trump do? He appoints 2 people to Doge. He makes this advisory committee and puts Elon Musk and Vivek on it. So what? He creates 2 new jobs, basically. Ha ha ha. To get rid of federal jobs. I'm like, yeah. Yeah, their purpose is to reduce the size of government, reduce the government spending, and then to eliminate their positions. That's the whole point. It's sort of like when you have let's say you have a spending problem or spending addiction, or you're like a shopping kind of hoarder, right? I don't know if you guys ever watched the show Hoarders. I used to watch it a lot. It's sort of like let's say you spend too much and you buy stuff all the time, and you get to the point where you realize you have a problem, and then somebody says, hey, you could hire this person to come in and help you get organized and help you get all of your finances in order, and to help you, like a therapist, to help you to end this addiction. You could make the same joke there where it's like, oh, you're going to spend more money on a specialist. Yeah. Yeah. To help me with this spending problem. And then their job is done. It's over. Right. like sometimes you have to do that. That's how I kind of view Doge. It's like, come in here. It's worth it. You're going to come in here and help us cut the size of the government and the government spending and maybe do something about the debt. I'm knock on wood. And then sayonara. I think it's awesome. Kendra says, you need to keep your caroling voice for Christmas. Oh, thank you for reminding me, Kendra. Okay, so this coming, let's see, what day is it? Tuesday night, Christmas Eve. Tuesday night, Christmas Eve, if you were in the Georgetown, Texas area, you are welcome to go caroling with us in our church. We're going to go Tuesday night. We're meeting at 6:00 in front of Main Street Baptist Church in Georgetown. And my husband, Anthony Garcia, is going to be leading it. And we're just going to walk around a different, like to the square. We're going to go caroling on the square and to some of the homes in the historic district. So wear something warm if it's cold. And you don't have to be a great singer. I'm going to bring some hand warmers in case it's cold. I don't know. We'll just, we're going to have a grand old time. And we're going to do some classic Christmas hymns. And I can't wait. It's going to be like we're in a Lifetime movie. It's going to be fun. And wear like good Christmassy stuff. And if you're like me and you're not a great singer, just bring great enthusiasm and we're going to have fun. So thank you for reminding me about that, Kendra, to announce that. Oh, Squat and Pee, if you were here, you should totally come. Yeah, we're gonna have a ball. And if you've never been to Georgetown, Texas, it's really cute. That's why I said it feels like a Lifetime movie because it's so idyllic. Although it's starting to change now that so many people are moving in. But it's a very idyllic looking little Texas town. Therese, don't mock me. It is cold. Therese, I had to walk to the post office today and I put on a huge heavy coat and it's probably 70 here. But it felt very cold to me this morning. I'm going to wrap it up now. I just mostly wanted to cover the Doge and DEI news and share some excitement. And also for any new people who may be wondering what I believe and why, I wanted to explain some stuff about DEI. I know some of this is old hat to returning viewers, but for the new people, a lot of it's new. They haven't heard. Even this week, I was talking to people who haven't heard criticisms of woke. And so it's like, I'm going to keep doing this because I believe in getting more common sense people to leave the woke cult to understand that it's not classical liberalism and to depart from it. And that's kind of my purpose with this channel. So thank you guys for hanging out. Oh, Therese says it's snowing there. How beautiful. You're going to have a white Christmas. How beautiful. If you haven't seen it on Wednesday night on that Christmas panel, we just did a short episode about Christmas, the origins of Christmas, and you should go and check that one out. And we had a lot of fun. I love those guys. This coming week, I've got an interview coming out. I'm going to post on the community page. I'll let you know what day that's coming out. So I'm pretty excited about that. And I hope you guys have a good week leading up to Christmas. I hope it's really fun, and I hope you're going to have a blessed end of the year and a blessed 2025. I had fun hanging out with you guys today. Okay. I will see you later. Take care. Bye-bye.